Have you ever written a poem for your wife?
I have.
What is the poem called?
Now, I've written a few poems for my wife. There's one that she doesn't like because it describes me here sitting by the fire, and I hear her snoring upstairs. See, she didn't like the poem at all. But I'm reading the poem and I say she's snoring, but that's like the cooing of doves. It's wonderful music, you know. But she doesn't allow me to read that poem in public.
Despite originating 2,000 years ago, the Thirukkurals remain relevant for all eras. What attributes contribute to its timeless significance?
Again, I just take a Qural at random. Let me see. Okay, 955 in chapter 96. We're talking about nobility here. And he says, Began flahul gado to Mahailan Shigalor Davween. The prince will always be generous, even if he loses a lot of his wealth. Now, that's a very interesting statement. That, first of all, the word flah means a prince, and the adjective flahul is princely or generous. So you have that word in the Irish. Already you have the generosity associated with the prince. Okay? I remember reading about another sage in India called Mahavir, and he decided to head off into the forest. He had enough of, being a king or a ruler, and he gave away everything. Here, take it all. I don't need it anymore. And as he was just at the edge of the forest, a beggar came up to him and said, Have you something for me, Mahavir? No, you're too late. I've given everything away. Hold on, I have my cloak. He gave him the cloak, and off he went naked into the forest. So he gave away everything to the last stitch. So here's the thing about this type of wisdom, right? That a lot of the time it sounds a little bit mad, but we have to ask ourselves, maybe society is mad. Maybe the mad rush after money, a new car, promotion in the job, a new house, all this kind of stuff. Maybe this is driving us a little bit mad. And maybe we need the lessons of people like Mahavir and the lessons in this book to remind us of eternal truths. Because Jesus says something the same. He says, He who is last shall be first. He who is first will be last, So it sounds a bit mad because we all want to be first. First in the class, the richest person and all this kind of stuff. But these books exist and they will always be needed because we need to keep our lives in balance. Or we can easily become, like that, when we fall off our balance. It doesn't mean that I have to go into the forest tomorrow. They've knocked down too many of the forests anyway. This country was once all forest. A squirrel could go from the very top of Northern Ireland all the way down to Kerry in the south of Ireland without touching the ground once. He could jump from tree to tree. That's what they say, because the whole country was covered with forests. Then the British came along and they decided they'd build a navy. So they had to knock down all of our trees to do that. You can go into the forest mentally by not being mentally attached to your attachments. I don't have to give up the pleasures of a fire, the pleasures of good food, warm clothing. I don't have to run into the forest, but mentally I can. Mentally I can go into the forest. I can close my eyes. I'm in the forest now. And that's one of the great gifts that India gave to the world, meditation. the ability to just close your eyes once or twice a day, switch off, and go into the forest of the mind. That is probably the greatest gift that India has given the world, along with this book. And indeed, are we still running?
Yeah.
And indeed, that tradition of meditation is still very much alive today in parts of the world, and nowhere was it so powerful than in Tamil Nadu in the person of Sri Ramana Maharshi, who is considered by those with an interest in spiritual matters to have been the greatest sage of modern times. And, most of the time he said nothing. Nothing. I mean, there are hundreds of pages here. Sri Ramana Maharshi decided, I don't know, what can you say? So people just came and sat in silence, and he sat there in silence, and they got something from him. They got the forest of the mind, the endless self that was never born and that would never die. And he taught the world that. And he was an enlightened sage. And India can be so proud of the sages and the wise men and women and saints that your country has produced,
What do you think the Thirukkurals teach us about living the most fulfilling and enjoyable human life?
It touches on everything. It touches, as I think we may have already mentioned, on things like friendship. You have friends. Sometimes we're foxes sometimes in the garden, urban foxes, and sometimes you see them playing together, There's friendship among animals as well, you can be sure of it. So he talks quite a lot about friendship, as an important kind of signpost in our lives. And when you're displeased with your friend, you should tell that friend that you're displeased, because that's what's said in this book is that, we have duties. Friendship isn't just all pleasure. We have duties as well as friends, to help our friends and to tell them where they're going wrong. And I'd love to see this book being well known in Ireland. I think there's a curiosity, a hunger, a thirst for books like these. This is not some obscure text. I hadn't heard of it, I must admit, before I was asked to transcreate it. But I see its greatness now that I've completed the work. I see its greatness. I see that it belongs to the great books of the world. And there's, as I say, there's a hunger out there for real knowledge, because there's a lot of false knowledge and fake news and all sorts of fakery going on out there. People don't know what's happening. This would be good for them, good for people, good for society as well. In troubled times, in times of confusion. But I think when the book was launched, somebody was saying they read it for half an hour every day. It's probably the best way to do it, because we need constant reminding of certain things until they become part of our own nature. Like driving on the left-hand side of the road or something. Just that's the way to do it. That's the way to behave. You can't be driving on the other side of the road. You'll have an accident. Yeah. So this tells us really what side of the road we're on. Because I think it was Mark Twain, the American writer, who said, you can't stand in the middle of the road or you'll be knocked down. Yeah.
Will the Irish translations of these Quran become a part of the Gaelga syllabus for schools in Ireland to benefit those of the younger generation?
No. I think we need a new edition. As I explained earlier on, I think this is too difficult for the level of Irish. The way Irish is being taught in this country is not really satisfactory. I'm afraid to say, and I'm ashamed to say, that most children in Ireland are illiterate in their own language. Those who go to Irish medium schools have a good knowledge of spoken and written Irish. The others don't, I'm afraid to say. Sorry to say. But if we could prepare a special children's edition with illustrations, a shortened, abridged edition, not all of this is suitable, or I won't say suitable, but no, not all of this is of. It's really a book for adults as it stands now, I think. Young adults to adults, teenagers perhaps. But for children in the age group of, let's say, 8 to 12 to 13, that age group, I think a special edition is needed, and it could be done, and it could be delightful, and I think there's a need for it. Among Tamil children living in Ireland, but also among Irish children. Why not? If we don't learn about each other's culture, how are we going to live together? If we don't know what's important in each other's culture, what's significant, and what we respect in each other's culture, we need more of that. And there are a lot of people, a lot of librarians and people like that who would help out, who are interested in projects. There are some teachers who would be interested in making a project out of a children's edition of the Quran. Let's see what happens. Okay.
Do you have any messages you would like to convey to the younger generation using the Thirukkural?
I think it's important that we keep an open mind about what are the treasures of other cultures, and the treasures of our own culture, and where they come together. Well, they come together in this book because it combines bilingual editions, the Tamil and the Irish, beautifully produced, I think, by Evertype, a publisher who used to be based in Ireland. They're now based in Scotland. The world in recent times has become what's called a global village, There was a time when it took so long to get to another part of the world, and some people believed that in fact you couldn't get there, that you'd fall off, that the world was flat. But now we're in touch, and with social media and everything, people get news like that within a second. So the world has shrunk in a way, but the mind hasn't shrunk. The mind is still capable of expanding. Finding out about other cultures, I'm surprised with myself that I didn't find out about this book myself until I was in my 70s. I'm now 74, and I hadn't come across it. Now, why is that? Because, I thought I knew a lot, but obviously I didn't. This is one jewel that escaped me. So, how did that happen? Well, I don't know. But there's no excuse, even if you can't afford to buy a book like this. There's an awful lot of free books available on the internet now. I write myself for an outfit called Free Books for Kids. You can download these books for nothing, I have a book about Gandhi called Walk with Gandhi, available to download freely, on Free Books for Kids. In India, you have a fantastic project called Story Weaver, produced by Pratham Books in New Delhi, in various languages, including Tamil, of course. And they're all free. Beautiful stories, and some of them are rhyming, and an awful lot of them about nature and wildlife and so on. And some of them are, funny stories and that kind of thing. I've translated a lot of those as well into Irish, about 50 of them, all from India, for kids. And they are being read in schools in Ireland. So we are making links like that, and it's possible, especially in the digital age, it's cheaper and cheaper to produce digital material, free, or books in what's called printing on demand. So I don't have to fill the house as I used to before with unsold books. You just say print on demand, and they print 3 for you, or 5 or 10 or whatever amount of books you need. So with today's technology, we should be able to make this available in many different formats, including a children's edition. And let's do it.
Yeah, looking good. Did you get a chance to read any other literary book in Tamil other than the THIRUVALLUVAR?
Well, I've read an awful lot about Ramana Maharshi, but he's from the modern era of the 1940s. But apart from that, well, I keep in touch with contemporary Indian literature from all the states, in translation, of course. There are digital magazines such as Muse India, and they feature poetry from Bengal or stories from Tamil Nadu, or they have different features all the time. So Caravan is another magazine that I read. I read World Literature Today and Words Without Borders, which often feature literature from different parts of India, including literature from Tamil Nadu. And I also read literature from various states, which are poetry written by Dalits and so on, which is very interesting. By the way, the word Dalit is related to an Irish word as well. We talked about the pool of Indo-European languages. Dailt is the Irish for to separate, yeah? And I think that dal with a split P also means separate, you see? So they're all there if you look at it. But there's some interesting poems being written by Dalits as well, which I find interesting. We need more translations, in Irish and in English from all over the world, and it's not enough, to have English really, because English only means you're approaching a kind of a monocultural world, a monolingual world, and with that there are dangers, because multilingualism is an important aspect of human culture, and it's actually related to biodiversity, because when languages die, with them other things die. Wisdom cultures die. Knowledge and names of plants that could heal diseases, all these things die. And if you come along and you've just got English, they'll say, what was the name of that cure we had for toothache? Oh, I can't think of it now, the word is gone. That's no good. We have to keep our words. Because in a sense, words are holy too, In the Judeo-Christian tradition, they say in the beginning was the Word. Well, it's difficult to understand what that means even, But there is a sense, I believe, as a poet, there is a sense that the word itself is holy. Not just a prayer or a mantra, any word for anything. It's holy in itself. And it's a divine gift. It's a divine gift, yeah? So it's important to treasure our languages. I hate seeing so many children in Ireland getting an exemption from Irish. Say, I'm not studying it. And they grow up, they don't know anything about Irish, It means that they don't know the meaning of the lakes and the mountains and the villages where they pass through. It's gibberish to them, unless they know the origin of the original Gaelic name. How are they going to know? You know, this happens too with local disasters. There was a local disaster there where flooding happened. You know, and the people say, why were these floods happening? And somebody said, well, if you looked at the place name, you'd find out that this is Badinadilta. It means the town of floods. You should never have built houses here. The architect and the engineer didn't have Irish, and if they had Irish, they would never have built houses in that estate.
Did you notice, or can you explain, any cultural similarities between Tamil and Irish while transcreating the Thirukural?
I would have to say something I said earlier on, that there is a common humanity. It exists, you know. We share instincts, you know. We share needs. And one of the instincts and one of the needs is actually a desire to know, yeah. And there are probably different ways of expressing different truths, you know. But for instance, when I'm when I'm translating something here, and he talks about a sense of justice and fair play, I would have used a phrase there called "koharam mefene." Now that would mean nothing in Tamil, right? Because it's an Irish expression, which refers back to the Fianna, who were a band of warriors in ancient Ireland. Whether they were mythical or real, it doesn't matter. But we say "koharam mefene," meaning the sense of justice that the Fianna practiced, a code of justice, a code of honor. Right? So what a translator does is takes the pool of knowledge that's available there and puts an Irish metaphor, applies an Irish metaphor to it. You know. Similarly, you know, if I were being translated into Tamil, I would expect that the Tamil translator would use a metaphor that's well established in the language to convey the same idea, right? So that's how it works, and that's the magic of language, you know. And just to sum up our conversation, I would say that we've discovered a treasure here in Ireland that we didn't know existed, and I really hope that more people will hear about it and will dip into it. And if we get a children's edition going, that's the one that maybe if you read as a child, you'll say, "Oh, I want the adult edition. I want to read the adult edition now." You know, and this is it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Karmina Mahagat.
Guramahagat, thank you immensely for sharing your insights and wisdom regarding your work on the Thirukural in Irish. Your perspectives have been enlightening and thought-provoking, shedding light on the significance and beauty of this remarkable literary endeavor. We thank you very much from Ireland Public Academy.
Karmina Mahagat.